Welcome to our 10th webinar in this series. Today we're going to be looking at maximising the use of Power BI in relation to our projects and looking at our project and portfolio reporting tools and how we use reporting as part of that. So hopefully everyone's jumping in and joining into the meeting as we go through. Introduce myself. So I'm Phil Eilenberg. I'm the delivery manager for Victoria. So I lead a team of our delivery consultants as part of Sensei, delivering project and portfolio management tools to our customers, and looking to, as part of that, really focus on the reporting aspect and how we include reporting as part of as one of the major parts of our solution. So hoping to dive into that into quite a bit of detail today. A bit of housekeeping to start off with. So as you do join in the chat, hopefully you can jump on mute, so we have some focus from those adding questions. If you do have a question, happy for you to jump in and raise your hand using the raise your hand feature. And if you do want to have some conversation or questions in the chat, happy for you to use the chat on the side as well. And we'll be monitoring that, and we can raise any of the items that are raised in there. So what are we doing today? So we're going to have a slightly different take on reporting and how we demonstrate reporting. So often if I was going to run through our reporting workshop, we'd be looking at how Power BI works as a function of a system and how we'd look at the technology of reporting and the types of technology available. So Power BI being one of those options. And we kind of look at how we would track and use project status reports and the different options around how we would aggregate data together to give our reporting output. And I'd go kind of into the details of how the reporting function, the technology behind it. But we thought we'd do a slightly different take today of how we'd actually use the reports to provide business benefit and to how, obviously, we put these in place to try and give our executive group a fairly good understanding of how the projects and our organization is tracking. And a lot of times we don't have the exec group as part of our project working group, and we do kind of guess or assume some points on how we would develop our reporting suite to meet their needs. I thought I might flip it today and say, get our executive group at Sensei involved to say what they like to see as part of the reporting and have their input to see what decisions they make based on the reports that we do generate, and see some of the information and the data that's behind it and how they actually utilize that. So trying to remove that guesswork and see firsthand what's actually being involved. So we'll do that. We'll have a live analysis of a platform today and looking through our reporting suite. I'm going to start off with a quick review of project and portfolio management. I'll have a bit of a review of how the data is structured in terms of the report, so we can start to see what we're talking about in terms of some context. And then we'll dive straight into a live interrogation of a reporting suite. So hopefully it's really beneficial to you all to see that in process and some live questions. And we will we'll have some questions as we go. Happy for people to jump in, but also we'll leave some time for questions at the end as well. Now, as I said, to help me out today in terms of our executive suite, I've got our CEO and our delivery director, Andy Neumann and Greg Carroll. So I'll let them introduce themselves now.
All right, I'll go first. Good day all. I'm Andy. I'm the CEO here at Sensei. So I've got a couple of different strings to my bow. One is that I'm a bit of a data nerd, so I will get pretty excited by what we get to go through today. But I guess I'm bringing probably a lens to this that's slightly different to what Phil will have. So all businesses are different, obviously, but for the most part, we have systems where our work originates from, CRM and the like. I spend a lot of time in those types of sales or work ideation systems. I spent a lot of time in the finance where, you know, the bills get paid and go out at the end of the month. So that can be any kind of finance system, but for us it's Xero, but for you it might be Tech One or Oracle or SAP. And yes, this middle section where the work actually gets done, I do rely a lot on my delivery management team, and Greg is a delivery director, but do like to go around and poke about in there as well. So I'm sure we'll cover some of the things that I usually look at as well. Greg, do you want to give an overview of your role as well before we go?
Sure thing. Hi there. Good afternoon. I think I think there are a few familiar in the faces in the crowd, so hi to those who've met me already. My name's Greg Carroll. I am Delivery Director for Sensei. So my role is to be accountable for, look after all of the work that Sensei does that delivers out to customers. So it's reasonably broad, but predominantly I look after our customer care team who do our break fixes and help customers who have got an ongoing relationship with us. I look after our 3 project delivery teams. One of those are vision and adoption team who do workshops and run some of our bigger engagements. They also have a training element there as well. I've got 2 teams that deliver projects directly out to customers, and then a very, very tiny PMO. So I've got overarching sort of responsibility for the PMO. Actually, my background's in PMO, so it's one of my favourite bits. And yeah, as you can imagine, I don't know, we probably run about 50, anywhere between 50 and 100 active projects. We've probably got maybe 25 or so people delivering projects out in the wild across a whole bunch of different states and a whole bunch of different customers. So although we're a reasonably small company, I've got quite a lot of things to keep a track of. And so I would say I'm in Power BI absolutely bare minimum every day, usually multiple times a day. We run our meetings out of Power BI reports. It's become like quite the feature of how we know what's going on in the delivery space. Oh, that's me. Phil, you're on mute still.
I got muted. There you go. So thanks, Andy and Greg. Really helpful to have you guys on board today. So hopefully we can provide some great insights into how we review some of our reporting. So what I'm going to do is I will dive into our report suite. So I guess as a going in statement today, get a bit of an overview. So we're going to be using a demo instance of one of our tools, and the tool today is Sensei IQ. And we looked at potentially using our internal live process and our system that we use internally, but we had some privacy concerns. We thought perhaps it's better just to use our demo instance, but we're really going to try to align our questioning and I guess the analysis of the tool and the data that we have to real world situations and put some of those scenarios through as if we were discussing them as live projects. Now, to set, I guess, what these reports are looking at, we are looking at a Microsoft project PPM solution. So as some background, most of you on the call will know that Sensei configures and delivers a portfolio and project management tool, and we base it on the Office 365 capability and the full suite of tools available to us through that. And again, the one I'm using today, Sensei IQ, some of you might be familiar with. It's one of our new product lines. So hopefully as we go through, you'll get a good understanding of, I guess, what the basis is for the information we're talking about and where it's coming from. So I might just give you a little bit of a run through of how this looks and kind of the structure, and then we can jump into some of the details of the reports. So in Sensei IQ, we have all of our projects set up. So as with every project and portfolio management tool, and the tool really is, I guess, agnostic. We don't necessarily have to have this tool to be able to provide this output. We're trying to track the same kind of information across any type of PPM solution. So hopefully it's very familiar. And I guess one of the major requirements we always get is that all of our projects are in the one system. So there's kind of what a look of what this might look like, having everything in the organization presented in the one solution. So we do have that single source of truth for tracking everything. Behind this, so you'll see all the projects we're in here, some of the information we track for projects. We can see some high-level details here at what this project is about. We can see things like key dates, deliverables, tasks, issues and risks, decisions, changes, lessons, financials is quite a big element that we'll go through today, benefits and some documents. So as part of this overarching solution, we try to involve everything that you would typically track for a project and in the project management methodology. So I guess this is the basis of the data and the information that we input to the tool. And then what we're going to look at today is focusing on the outputs that we get based on this information and how we can use that as a way for decision making. And I guess this is one of our key points that we bring up, that when we implement these tools, that we're really careful not to create just a tool for reporting's sake. So you're not entering information just for the sake of it and just because there's a field there for it and you need to enter something, but because the output will actually give benefits to your executive level or to the stakeholder group that it's aimed at to be able to make meaningful decisions. So as we do go through today, we won't be looking so much at the tool itself. We can see here the pages that we expect the PMs to be updating and the team members to be involved with. There's an element we can see this within Teams as well. So hopefully utilizing Teams going forward, we see Microsoft had this big push to have us focused in using Teams as our single work platform. So we can see kind of a couple of views of how we'd have this all situated within Teams itself. This is one of the focuses of Sensei as well, trying to integrate all the elements of Office 365 together to give you a really easy to use and really customer or end user friendly solution to work through. If you do have any questions, we can leave things about the tool itself towards the end, or happy to take questions offline about this as well. So I guess where I want to jump in is to say we have a full reporting suite here, and we have a whole bunch of information that we can look at. And so I'll probably at this stage throw it over to Andy and Greg and say, as an executive group, what kind of things are you trying to get out of these reports? I guess what information do you look at on a weekly basis, and how can you use this? And yeah, I'll throw it open. What would you like to see?
Yeah, I might take the first crack if you don't mind, Greg. So I think you know, the way in which I'm engaging with this system is probably driven from a different perspective. So usually, and particularly in these COVID times, I'm keeping a closer eye on what's happening in our finance system. So usually I'll see a finance anomaly, or maybe I'm doing some forecasting in the finance system or seeing forecasts roll in that don't quite match. So I'm not really necessarily starting at a project view, but I'm probably more the program or portfolio view. So why don't you take us in to show us how that looks from the outset, I guess, in terms of, you know, costs or spend at a portfolio level.
Okay, yeah, sure. So if we look into Portfolio IQ here, and what I'll try to show you, I guess, is how we structure the costs and our finances for the projects and the program level, and then up to that portfolio level. So in this particular reporting suite, we can see everything that's part of all of our portfolios. And in this page particularly, we can see our pipeline of work that's going through all of our different stages here. So things going through identify, review, initiation, and then into actual selection of our projects, what's in planning, and then what's our big piece of what's currently in execution. So we do have this overview of everything that's starting off and all the way through the closing. And I guess for Andy, your point, you'd probably be more interested in our portfolio cost breakdown and looking at how we've structured some of our budgets. So what I might show you here. So in this case, we've got a budget here made up of just over 6.5 million almost. So to show you how this is broken down, what I can look at here is actually in this total budget, we've broken it by portfolio, and you can see, I guess, the bulk of our spend in this period is for the 2020 IT portfolio. If we have a look at what is in there, you can see the main program of work we're looking at here is the Cassowary Product Development Program. This one's made up of a whole bunch of projects. So we can see in our program here, we've got a bunch of projects that we are tracking in this program. The bulk of these two are the tenant renewal project and mobile app project. If you wanted to see, I guess, how these costs are structured, we can have a look at the categories of costs. So this has got OPEX and CAPEX costs in here. And our tenant renewal, we have in OPEX, we've got some labor costs coming through, and in CAPEX, we've got software and hardware. So I guess to give you a view of how we would break up our portfolio budget, this would probably give you a good view of where your costs are going and that spend profile.
Yeah, that's perfect, Phil. So taking it from there, I guess I'd be keen to know how we're tracking and where those costs are actually going to as well. So that's the budget outline. What else can I drill into to have a look at here?
Yeah, sure. So I guess from a budget tracking perspective, this will give you your breakdown of where everything's going. But if we need to look at how it's progressing, what we can use is to have a look at the site behind the scenes of each of these elements to see the information that we're tracking for these. So at a project, program or portfolio level, we can start to find information behind this. So let's see the portfolio status to start with here. So this would be our portfolio status report, and it's set at a portfolio level. So you can see it's the 2020 IT portfolio at the moment. It's got some high level information about this. You can see that budget coming through here. We can see how many actual dollars have come through so far and some variance on this. Some details about what this portfolio is and the programs that are making up this whole portfolio, and also sub-projects underneath here to say what makes up the whole portfolio as the work. So I guess my question for you is, how would you tend to review a status report? What are you looking for in terms of how it's tracking or if it's on or off track?
Usually I'm yelling at Greg at this point, aren't I? So I'm saying, Greg, checking that things are up to date, obviously, the status of work. But Greg, how are you going to get out of this one when I say, how are we tracking?
So, yeah, look, this question never really arises because everything's always tracking perfectly here at Sensei.
Yeah.
Sort of a daily question or weekly question. Hey, look, so typically what I'd do is I'd go and, so probably the first call is to review the project status stuff actually and look for self-reported issues. So you can see there in the sub-projects there are some traffic lights that have been set to red and amber. They'd be the first port of call for project managers who basically raised the flag and said, actually, this project's I'm having some issues, and they'd be the first place I'd go. Those are not always sort of the best indicators, though. Actually, the next place I'd then go is probably to the financials. So we use dollars sometimes correctly, sometimes incorrectly as a proxy for delivery, and so it's not always the case, but it's a reasonably reliable indicator where we can go and look at what someone said they were going to spend and how much they've actually spent, and if there's a variance there, usually it's something's going off plan for some reason. So that's probably where I'd go. Actually, to the dollars after the traffic lights.
Yeah, sure. So this view here will show us our high-level portfolio tracking of our finances. So looking at actuals in the past and forecasts into the future. We do get to see, I guess, how we've tracked against our budget at this level. We could have a look and zoom in here and say, okay, over time, we've kind of tracked against our budget pretty well early on, but kind of dropped away a little bit. You can see we've got a little bit of difference between our forecast costs and the actuals that have come in. So maybe into August, we kind of dropped away a little bit, and we are forecasting 169 grand to come in September. So maybe this is probably a good point to jump into here and have a look through what's going on in this point. Probably what I can show you as this is portfolio level, looking at budgets that have been set and how we track against those. But if we go into a little bit more detail around this, perhaps we'll jump to the project overview dashboard. And we do have quite a detailed suite of reports that we're looking through here in types of the information we're looking at. So if I have a look at our financial dashboard for here, much the same layout. So we're looking at financials of projects over time. You can see in here we've got the full list of all of our projects that we're currently tracking. Perhaps if I sort this by budget level, you can see, yeah, these are kind of our higher level projects. This is how they're tracking. And so, yeah, again, how we're aligned to our budget. Looks like we're a little bit under budget at this point. So how would you then go about drilling into this to find out what might be going wrong?
So what I do, so like it would be, it's pretty obvious actually if the finances look like that on a project that something's going on. So something's happening. There's a green traffic light overarching KPI, which would sort of question. So what I'd then do probably is I'd start to drill into a particular project, and I'd be looking for a couple of things. Looking for how recently it's been updated to work out whether it's being actively managed. Then I would probably run through the key sort of project management elements to see if I could see any obvious signs of distress. I think might be a reasonable way of putting it.
Yeah.
Probably where I'd go.
Let me see if I can show you some of that stuff. So if we take an example here, probably one of our biggest projects, the tenant renewal here, if I actually single this one out, so there's a couple of options for this. So we could have a look at its project status report and see how it's tracking from an individual project. And this is kind of, we put this together as a automated status report in itself so that the project can create this and have it as a point in time status report and deliver this to its stakeholder groups. But probably from your perspective, and if you're looking through this from a high level, you probably want to see it in conjunction with others to start off with, but also see your same pages, but just with this project displayed. So if I just filter on this one project, we can now see, I guess, the project tracking of the individual project here. And all of these projects now actually, or all these pages, all our reports are just filtered on the one project. So we can probably use this as a good way to step through these screens to see where things are up to for this particular project. And if at any time we need to bring in others, we can start to show them alongside as well to get the context. But from a high level, yeah, we get its traffic lights across here. We can see at a high level number of issues, risks, changes, decisions. So it's a good way to start high level. If we dive in a little bit further, so timelines here, we get to see where the timeline of this product kind of sits. We can see it's going out to 2021 and kind of how it's progressing against today's date. The PM will probably have set a bunch of key dates that they're tracking against, so what they're trying to hit. You can see some of these, where they're up to, what's being done, what's still at risk, what's still high risk items. If you wanted to, I guess I could show you the report calendar like this. So if we want to see what's coming up, we can have a look at September. So we're meant to have the data center set up and hardware installed. We need to have the detailed software design complete by today. So this one, the PM's actually tracking this as at risk. So maybe that's something that might flag to you. And as we go through, there's all this information that we can have a look at from the project perspective to see, yeah, kind of where it's up to and kind of the details of what it's tracking as part of its information. Does that help?
Yeah, yes, it does. That's where I'd go actually. I'd start to navigate my way through these tabs in the first instance to see if I could see what was going on. So there's a bit of a temptation, as easy as it is, to look at a project, see that it's going a little bit awry or potentially going a little bit awry, and get straight on the phone to the project manager and ask them what's going on. And that's okay. It's a really an easy way of doing it, but we ask our project managers to provide all this information. The idea is that they provide it once and then all of their stakeholders get to check it out. So they'll use this type of data for their project status reports that we send out to customers. They'll use it for reporting to the PMO. They use it in our sort of exec, and we'll use it in our exec meetings. So I think it's only fair that my first move should be to look through the data to see if I can't self-serve the reasons. There's every likelihood that we'd find an issue in here that says the project stalled for blah reason, or X milestones have been missed for blah reason. I'd preferably like to do that first, to try and self-serve it, because it's irritating. I used to run projects myself, and it's pretty irritating where you spend an amount of time keeping your project nice and clean and your data up to date so everyone knows what's going on, only to have 3 different people pick up the phone and call you and ask you the same question. So yeah.
Yeah, sure. So I guess some of the items you've raised there is to see where this project is up to without out bugging the PM. So one of the things we could have a look at is, it's list of tasks and where they're up to and if they're on track or not. So as this project's tasks, you can kind of see how it's tracking against those. Some things to highlight here for you. So some start and finish dates, these are passed. And it looks like we have some remaining hours in here that can't be like this. This is finished now. So this should be all in the future, which means this can't be done. So I can see this is marked as overdue. So it looks like we're behind on some of these tasks. What would you, I guess, get from this, and how would you try and look into what's behind this being off track?
Oh, look. Actually, I'll make another point. If the data's not up to date, I will get on the phone to the project manager, by the way, because that's equally irritating if you go and do try and self-serve this information, and there's, no one's put any information in here at all. That's a slightly different issue. Oh, look, do you know what? I'd probably at this point, if it's obviously slipping and there are tasks that are not happening, I probably would get onto the project manager. Actually, I'd probably also get onto you, Phil, as the leader of the team too. And this has got likely to have a knock-on effect, right? So if one project stops for whatever reason and we can't progress with it, then what we don't really need is people sitting around waiting for stuff to happen. So in all likelihood, we've got a resourcing to sort out at this point. So we probably want to have a start to see what the impact that this stalling would have on the team and what they've got on their plate, and how there's anything we can do in the meantime so that we're not just waiting.
Yeah, sure. So let's have a look at the project resources who are working on this. So I can see for still our one project, the tenant renewal, these are the tasks that everybody has, and when we can kind of see who has work outstanding. So we can see Bryce, he has a lot of work that's still required to go. I guess this is at a high level view of what's still to be done in this project. We can kind of have a little bit of a closer look at this and see, okay, from our resourcing perspective, again, we can see our tasks that need to be done. We've got a few of our team allocated to some of the same tasks, so they're working on this together. But this does look like it's late, so there's still some work outstanding here. And again, the next one coming up, so Bryce has a lot of work to do on this particular project. It might be that this one's going to be a little bit at risk, because if we can't get this work done coming up, it's going to start to push everything out. So things are going to be late. And I know we reviewed the resource forecasting on a weekly basis and almost daily at the moment to make sure our resources are right, especially from my team. So if I was having a look at this, I want to see, okay, this is what Bryce has got allocated for this coming period, but I also need to see what else he's working on. So perhaps I can show you as an example. So if we've got Bryce here, and this is all this work he has for this my tenant renewal project. But again, if we can take out the projects here, or the project filter, we'll actually get to see what his conflicting requirements are. So he's got actually a lot of work he's currently started, and there seems to be a lot of outstanding as well. So it might be that we are in trouble here, that some things might start to get pushed out because, yeah, if we have a lot of effort outstanding, it seems that he just won't get to that. And so from this perspective, I guess it's a high-level view of what we're trying to track towards, and to make sure we're on track. But I might actually show maybe a more detailed view, and this is a view that we use on a very regular basis to track resource allocation. So moving from just jumping from I guess, yeah, a high-level view of this, going into a more detailed view, and yeah, so Greg and Andy, this is what we go through on a weekly basis to review our resourcing in Sensei. We are looking at a heat map of how resources are allocated to see where projects are, or what resources projects are working on, what projects resources are working on, what tasks they have to do, and where there's over and under allocation. So I know from our team, for example, we're looking at red being a massive over allocation, and we start to see, okay, that if they've got too much work on, and we can start to see where this work is coming through, that they won't be able to do that. So it's going to start to push some things out, and perhaps there's areas where we can either shuffle the work around, or it might be that we can distribute this work. So we can see in November that half the team's really crammed here and the other half is pretty empty. So yeah, this kind of looks like we can probably sort out some of this by distributing the work a little bit differently. And so we would internally, as a weekly process, I know I look through this to try and figure out that ahead of time. But I guess, Andy, a question for you. So why is it so important that if we're tracking our resources, I guess, to this level of detail, A, to make sure that the projects are right, but from your perspective, why do you need to see that resourcing, I guess, aligns to what we have coming up?
Yeah, look, clearly there's an intrinsic link between, our consulting team, people's ability to chew through the work, and our ability to invoice it. So it has that financial knock-on effect for us of revenue and ensuring that we've got money coming in to pay the bills. But also there's a cultural aspect or a duty of care aspect as well, to make sure that people aren't over allocated. So we use this balancing for workforce planning, and we encourage all of our team to keep projects as up to date as possible and as realistic and pragmatic as possible. And I think that's come up a few times in the chat, along with Greg, you said it earlier. It's only as good as the data that we're working with at this point. So getting the right data in, getting it fed from the right sources, and keeping it current so that it's not stale. And I think that personally, I use a lot of these reports to make sure the data isn't getting stale, that it is up to date. Because once you kind of lose that momentum or that currency of the data, it's very easy for it to kind of slip over the edge. So I saw that we had Matthew ask a question about that. Okay. So resourcing has definitely a knock-on effect, hiring and therefore costs, and the revenue that we achieve, or the benefits that might be realised as a result of getting through projects.
Yeah, sure. So that's I guess a good point you've raised there, to look at what we forecast for our revenue coming up and making sure that's correct. So I know it's another one that we focus on internally to make sure that it's we are tracking accurately towards that. Let me just refresh this. So I know that in our weekly meetings, we do have a look at the upcoming month and whether we're likely to do that. So perhaps we use this. I know you love this this graph. We look at every company meeting, but we could see here that in September, for example, we've got 242 grand forecast. So I guess you might be interested to see if that's accurate, or how accurate that is by what we've got planned for that that period. So we've looked a little bit now at how we track what has been done and whether things are on track. But I guess for the future, to see how likely this is, and again, what we look at kind of week by week. So if I can see here our budget, our high level projects, we get to see kind of the variance overall for the project and how it's tracking against its initial budget. But we're probably trying to go a little bit deeper to find out where we expect spend for next period, and then how to see if that's going to be correct. So if we have a look at some of our project tasks in here, and we start to look at, I guess, anything that might be falling behind in our coming period. So if we're looking at overdue or late tasks, and we see, yeah, we have a small amount, which is not too bad, and we get to start to see, okay, what might be stalling or what might be falling behind here, and maybe by remaining hours. So start to see where things might be, yeah, expected to have higher spends, but there's no progress against this yet. So they'll be forecasting this for the next period. So it's something that we might have to jump onto ahead of time to make sure that this is actually going to occur, and we do have these costs coming through. One thing, yeah, Greg, you mentioned before about chasing up the PM. So trying to make it easier through here, what I can do is find from the tenant renewal project is to have a look at what they've got up to. So we do get to see a status report from this PM and see when they've last updated the project. So it's quite current. So I guess, Andy, to your point before of having accurate information in there, we can show that this is a live project, and they're making status report updates to this project. We can see that there are completed milestones recently. There are upcoming milestones we're working towards. They have marked their financials as green, so this is maybe a little concerning that they've marked it that it should be green, but we're not too sure that it's correct. So it might be something worth looking into. And as we go through, we can have a bit more of a view about what this project is doing. So again, it's tasks here, which we've had a bit of a look at. We can look at all the different aspects of this. So we can see, again, the key dates we had a look at earlier, deliverables, some risks, some issues, decisions, and change requests. But in here, we've also seen there's some late or items which have passed their due date in here, and also some items which are missing data. So Greg, I don't know if you wanted to jump in and say what we can do maybe to chase this up in terms of the elements that might be missing.
Sorry, I was responding to something in the chat.
Okay, thanks for helping out.
Sorry. I'll come back to that in a second, actually. I'll come back to the response in the chat. So at this point, with a bunch of things that look like they're running late, yeah, I'd probably go and talk to the PM at this point and go find what's going on. How likely is it to get restarted? What's the impact? So are there any deadlines or constraints that we need to be aware of? How do we get it back on track? We might want to leverage more people or to help speed it up, or switch out resources if we've got stuck. Might be a customer problem where they've got stuck internally. So yeah, I'd probably get on the front foot with the PM to work through resolving these sorts of issues, and then probably a replan just to make sure that our resource forecasting was correct. Go on, Andy.
And Andy, you got your hand up?
Yeah, and I was just going to say, and just to put that in context as well, it isn't always a big stick conversation to have with a project manager. In this case, Phil's gone through this scenario, and we can see a project that's been updated last week by the project manager. There's a couple of key pieces of information missing here. So there's probably an aspect of governance that's going to bring this to the fore, and then it's just some education to go through to help them, because if they've recently updated the project and said everything's sweet in terms of finance, but we can see that it's not the way that they're scheduling, I think here's an opportunity to work that through with the project manager themselves as well, to give them the additional skills, capability, or education to lift their game a little bit.
Okay, cool. So yeah, in terms of responding to that, we can actually do that through Teams here. So you see some of our projects have a Teams group for this. So for our tenant renewal project here, if we have a look at this, we get some of the information in Teams itself. We can start to look at the product itself, but yeah, part of the collaboration piece here, hopefully it's quite helpful that we can jump into the Teams channel for this project as easy communication, and just say, hey, can we look at updating some of the project status report elements, and fire that through the PM. So hopefully, yeah, a really quick way to jump in there and have a central repository for that communication as well. So to help them either prompt them to start to look into it, and again raises that point of having a proactive view of what's being reported here, rather than being always reactive to reports submitted to you in terms of, yeah, here's my monthly sales report, to review it and go through it. All right. Now, Annie and Greg, did you have anything else, or maybe we could throw over to questions from the chat, or pre-submitted questions?
Questions from the chat would be a good one, because I think Azim's asked an interesting one there around how we do forecasting or analysis, and is it based solely on the data that's provided by project managers within projects or schedules,
Mm-hmm.
or can you take some algorithms, forecasting, you know, or models that can be applied? So
yeah.
I think, yeah, I'll let you go with it, Phil.
Sure. So I guess we have a couple of different ways for forecasting. So we look at, yeah, I guess a task layout to say, we hope that a project manager will track their project tasks and have a look at planning their project out accurately over time. And that's probably once we get to the project environment when it's kicked off and they do have an accurate plan. There are occasionally a couple of steps before that as well that we could look into. So at the start of this, we had a quick look at our pipeline of work. So maybe it's worth having a look at this. From initial stages, we try to make sure that getting a product set up doesn't require too much overhead. So, excuse me, that things can step through the initial phases of ideas and idea generation before they get kicked into full end-to-end scheduling and planning process. And we try to avoid that anything that isn't going to go ahead gets stopped pretty early, so we don't waste too much energy on it. So our funnel actually looks at our strategies which we have, so our grow, run and transform strategies that we're looking at for the types of projects, and then going through each of these phases. So we have a few which are in identify, and we have really high level information about this, kind of which department these are looking at, which investment category these align to, some basic costs, so some really high level costs, and then we try and put some benefits and maybe a high level effort estimate against this. And then as we go through, we try to review those and make sure that we select the right ideas that initially come through to make sure only those get put through to actual initiation phase. And then we'll start to put, I guess, some more information about these so we can have a more accurate idea of what will be coming through and what will start off as real projects. And again, as we build out this, we'll add more effort to it. So it needs some more information to build this up. But then hopefully that gives us a really good point to select the right projects before they start their full planning. So we'll try and take everything through a selection process to make sure it's the right project and that it's the right thing that we're doing for the organization overall before it actually gets into planning. And so, yeah, it actually has a plan put together, and then we'll start to look at how that work is going to flow on through into our execution phase. And this should be again, a live view of everything that's in progress and how it's tracking. So we'll get to see everything that's underway in this point. And then we try to have a formal closeout process as well. So looking to make sure that we do finish things off correctly, that we put the right governance over it to close it out, and so that we do have other lessons gathered from it and all the PIR activities completed as well.
That's probably worth springing to a question that Val asked earlier, Phil, which was around, can you show a comparison of investment and benefits in the same view? And look, I know that this is demo system, so it might not have those same attributes that we run internally. But absolutely, you want to be looking at, as Phil's kind of illustrated here, the business case and the expected benefits, and be able to reap those and track those at a portfolio level. So, Phil, do you want to just jump into Strategy IQ and see if we've actually got any data there?
Yeah, sure. So in our Strategy IQ section, we look to try and make sure we are tracking the strategy of the organization and to see if we can break our high-level strategic themes down into achievable goals and strategic goals that the organization is trying to achieve. And from that goal perspective, the benefits of what each project, program, and portfolio will deliver to actually achieve those goals. So if we're going to have a look here, we'll see things like industry advancement has some goals that we see here. So as an example, we've got increased revenue. And so some of the elements we're trying to track towards in this case. So this should be forming part of our review and analysis piece of the project and what it's actually delivering. So we choose the right project so that we don't kick off anything that doesn't actually align to our overall themes and the benefits that we try and track. So hopefully this is a really good way to, first of all, allocate that with our exec team and so you guys to make sure that we are we're trying to achieve the right things for the organization, and then to actually align everything that we're doing, all of our projects, to those themes and the goals, to make sure everything is working towards the same direction.
Yeah, so if you expand out decrease admin cost in healthcare underneath those benefits there, hopefully it'll show. Let's find out what it does show. Yeah, a couple of links to projects in the real world.
This is what the benefits we'll be trying to achieve, and this is actually going to be done by our health services program. So hopefully this program of work will start to deliver these benefits over the course of its life cycle, and we can track the health of the program by seeing some of those factors we've looked through today to try and see whether it's actually on track to deliver the benefits, and hopefully the program running smoothly delivers the outcomes that we're looking for.
Yeah, so I think at a high level within, and I know we're getting a little bit into product specific stuff here, but from a Power BI and reporting point of view, yeah, as long as you've got the data there and you've got those interdependencies, those roll-ups and that aggregation, there is a way to be able to present that. And this is, yeah, again, in a demo system, probably about the best bet that we've got to illustrate some of that. There's different tabs down the bottom which show you how you're tracking against, percentage or revenue benefits.
That's right.
That's a high level.
Yeah. All right. So we have about 10, 13 minutes left. So we'll try and jump into any questions anybody might have. We have a couple of pre-submitted questions as well, but apart from what's come through in the chat, is there any other questions that you might be interested in? And whilst people are thinking about their questions, I might just flick to here. So yeah, if you do have any questions, just chuck your hand up and we'll jump into those. But in the meantime, if you do want any further information of what we've discussed today, either from the reporting side of view or from the PPM solutions side of things, I'm happy to take any further questions or provide further information offline. I'm happy for you to get in touch with myself or part of the CEs, our customer executives, as part of our current customers, or if you just want to shoot questions through, we're happy to answer those as well outside of the session. Either towards how Power BI might be helping you internally for your PPM solution and what we may have already helped you with so far in enhancing that, or if we do want to have some more information around the tool itself and what we had to look quickly at Sensei IQ, happy to take those on board as well. I haven't seen any questions come up. Nobody else had anything to raise?
Yeah, there's a question coming through there, but I will just build on your statement then, Phil, that again, this is demo data and we're demoing, I guess, the power of Power BI. The relevance of data might not be finely tuned to your scenario or your organisation if you're sitting there. So, yeah, I'd encourage you to have a chat, to reach out to Phil. Please use and abuse him as much as possible. Send him all kinds of questions. But yes, our client exec team, if you're a customer care customer, then please reach out through that team or Pete. And yes, very keen, once you get down the rabbit hole of aligning data and what's possible, it just, Greg said it earlier, I think he's in there daily, I'm certainly in there daily. We run large aspects of our business around the data that's fed up, not fed up, but fed up. And part of that is making sure that the data quality is correct as well.
Yeah,
so,
sure.
Phil, I think we talked long enough to get a couple of questions. Yes.
Yeah, there's a couple up there. So a question around whether it's custom built, whether this comes with the package, or some questions around our Jumpstart package in the reporting suite. So yeah, a bit of clarification around what we've displayed here today. So this is a new product, the Sensei IQ product. It's based off CDS and more aligned to the Dynamics world now, the direction we see Microsoft pushing in. Our Jumpstart Power BI reporting suite was very similar and had a very similar layout to the information we have here, and we actually utilize some of that for when we look at our resourcing view, still looking at how we set it out from that Jumpstart perspective. But this is a different reporting tool. It still uses Power BI, it's just embedded within the tool itself. So we try to take the feedback of users being navigated away from the tool to actually view reports, then coming back to the tool to see the information and the input side. So we tried to make it a consolidated environment where the reports are actually embedded within the pages itself. So there's a question about the Power App solution. So yes, there are some Power Apps involved in our model-driven apps for the entry and tracking of data, but your output is still Power BI. So we are still using the Power BI suite as our reporting technology, and all of these reports are built upon a different data set, but hopefully still provide the same output and the same information for decisions as our older reporting suite.
And it's fair to say that everything that you're showing today is just part of either Sensei IQ or one of the other offerings we have in Power or Jumpstart. They're not custom built, they're out of the box from our perspective.
That's right. So part of our pre-configured solution. We had a couple of pre-submitted questions, so I can jump on those and we can work through these quickly as well. Again, if there's still anything outstanding, just shout out. So a couple of questions around access to Power BI and how teams or different roles would access types of Power BI reports. And yes, as you've seen today, we try to start off with a very free and open view of all of the information. We try to make sure that by increasing visibility, you get better information to use and you can see a lot more of what's going on. But there are ways to lock certain sets of information down to team members who might have access to different projects or the different roles that might have different data requirements. And we often look at the convenience versus security question to see whether we want to lock anything so people can't see it, or whether there's easier ways to, if you're the IT department, you don't want to see marketing stuff, so we can only show an IT focused dashboard to make it more convenient to find what's relevant to you. So a couple of the items there we need to look at, how we structure the reports and then how we lock them down, but there are ways to make dashboards and reports relevant to the correct team and role. The second point is a big one. So we always get asked with Power BI, how do I print off Power BI reports? And there was a question around how can we make paginated reports and how the export of information from Power BI to different stakeholder sets. So it always comes up. And Andy, I thought I might ask, do you currently print off any reports?
No. I'm working from home at the moment in Melbourne, and I did have the printer in this room that I'm in. And all I found was that my kids were just constantly printing schoolwork. So I actually moved the printer to the other end of the house. And yeah, that looks, almost everything. I can't think of anything that's not done online now, except for just a few tax things that I need to fill in. That's about it.
Fair enough. And I think that's probably consistent across our customers now, that working from home, we're finding less requirement to print off reports and submit those to the executive group, whether it's in that ELT meeting or in your steering committee meetings to have physical packs to hand out. We're hopefully seeing that transition and prompted by this current environment to have online information and to have that live analysis. We still realize there's that need for point in time data. So to say, this is what it did look at the end of the month. So we try to have some elements in there for tracking what happened at that point in time to save it there. And so we have some options for that around snapshotting and taking status report dates and to track it what it was that date. But yeah, there's some often requirements still that need a print off of pages. So Power BI obviously focused on online interrogation. There are a couple of limitations we do hit if you are trying to export to PDF or to PowerPoint. There's a good feature to export to PowerPoint or to PDF. So question, yes, it is possible to export. One of the major things we hit with the problem with that though is that with the scrolling feature that we see to make use of the real estate in the screen here, we just hit some limitations around what we actually include as part of that print off, and it ultimately becomes kind of a screenshot, and many of our users actually take just a screenshot of the information they need as that export. There are some different ways we can go about this to use a better view of this. If I can grab it in here. So we can dive in to see the full list of information, and we do get export capability to see getting items back out into Excel or to outside of the system. So a view to capture everything that's in there and export that all. But yeah, one of the major problems we see is that there isn't that whole screen or full information export to either a PDF or to a Word document available. And we're hoping that, I guess, what we've shown today is that move towards this proactive reporting element, but knowing there are still requirements for printable reports, and there's some other technologies that are available for that. Greg, do you want to jump in?
Yeah. Oh, look. So yeah, look. Occasionally we do need to print reports. Usually it's project status reports actually, and more often than not, we use a different reporting technology for that to do paginated reporting, embedded SSRS in our systems, so allows you to do that and export to Word and some other nicer pagination control. But Power BI rarely screenshots.
Yeah, that's it. So yeah, I guess one of the major questions we do get is how do you print from Power BI, and a few workarounds for it, but it is definitely intended for an online analysis tool. There was another question around consolidating data sources from multiple different areas and how to display that in Power BI. So we have this question a lot of financial information. We had a look at finances today as part of our review. And I guess one of the biggest elements we get is to have a look at actuals coming in from external systems. So if we set a budget either in the finance tool or in the project tool, we definitely want to forecast in the project side, but often we want to see the actuals coming in from that finance tool, which is a single source of truth for actual dollars. And it'll be where invoices hit and we see the accurate actuals for to date. So we often bring in that information into Power BI. Now, as part of the solution, we often need to pair it to a project. So in our case, we need to make sure that the right actuals align to the right project. So we do make sure that we map the two from the two systems to make sure we're showing the right information at the right level. But in Power BI itself, you actually have the ability to map data sets between themselves. So you don't actually have to bring the data into your projects tool to report on it. You can link it directly from a finance tool, for example. All you need to do is define that mapping. So there's a relationships table behind the Power BI visuals, and you can start to map your relationships in there to make sure they are aligned quite closely, and you can bring two sets of information together in a single dashboard. All right, so we've got 2 minutes to go. Hopefully that's been useful. I'll leave the last question for another time, perhaps in a future session, how we can start looking at trend information. But hopefully this has been helpful for you. If you would like to follow up with Sensei, please jump onto any of our contacts. So myself or anyone in this meeting, the Sensei LinkedIn or send through questions to letschat@sensei.cloud. But yeah, again, thanks very much for your time this afternoon, and hopefully this was a good session to see how we do use reports as part of our organisation, both internally and how that might be useful for yourselves in terms of your organisation and your reporting suite.
Awesome. Cecilia?
Thank you all for joining. Yes, so after this, we'll have recorded the sessions. We'll share that with you. I'll also send out the survey. Any feedback, welcome. And if you like any follow-up in terms of if you got any other questions that you can think about after, feel free to get in touch with any of us, and we'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have. So yeah, hope you enjoyed the session.
Thank you. Cheers.
Thank you.